And mistake number 5 is giving people a discount. And you might say, why is that a mistake?
In this episode, I speak to Nancy Harhut, a behavioral science and marketing expert, co founder of HBT Marketing, and author of Using Behavioral Science in Marketing. Nancy shares her insights on how behavioral science can transform your marketing strategy and help you avoid common pitfalls as a founder. Hi, Nancy. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Vishesh, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. I missed you at HubSpot inbound. You were speaking at HubSpot and you have a book out. Do you want to tell everyone about what the book is and how did the book come about?
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry I missed you at HubSpot, by the way. And I did speak, but it was one of the years when I was in and out very quickly, and I know we were trying to connect and we just weren't able to. But thank you for asking me about the book. The book is called Using Behavioral Science in Marketing, and it's all about how to drive customer action and loyalty by tapping into instinctive, kind of hardwired responses. And the opportunity for me to write a book was an accidental one, I guess you could say. I was scheduled to speak at South by Southwest, which is a large conference in Austin, Texas. And 2 weeks before the conference, COVID hit. Austin shut down the conference. There was no conference. And then in my inbox, I get a email from a publisher based in London called Kogan Page. And they said, hey, we want to go to your session. Obviously, we can't. Would you be interested in submitting a book proposal? So I quickly Googled them. I'd never heard of them. Sad to say, but I hadn't. And I was like, I gotta make sure this is legitimate. I Googled them. They're very legitimate. And I said, yes, I would love to. I submitted a proposal. They accepted it. And I ended up writing the book and they published it, which was a wonderful thing. So that's how I ended up doing it. It wasn't like I was thinking, gee, I'd love to write a book or I've got a manuscript. Let me see who I can try to interest in it. I was just incredibly lucky that they came to me, and they came to me because of the pandemic.
Yeah. And your speaking engagement, right? So you were already on the speaker list and that's how they probably found you. So awesome. What was the most hardest thing about getting the book out?
They'd wanted to see me at the conference, and since they couldn't, they said, how about writing a book? And I thought, yeah, it sounds easy enough. And then I realized that at the conference you speak for an hour, 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And the book had to be, I don't know, over 200 pages, almost 300 pages. And I realized that's a lot of information, a lot more than I could just speak about in an hour. Because at first I thought, oh, I'll just put what I was going to say in the speech into the book, and that would only get me so far. So I had to do some research, and I had to start to think about, how I want to organize it and what examples I could use for each point that I wanted to make. And then I had to do some research to find the scientific backing. And I wanted to make sure that the research was just enough to support what I wanted to say, but not, I know, scientific, not so intricate and techy that people wouldn't understand it or that I wouldn't even understand it. I needed to find things that were easy, understandable, and applicable. And that took a certain amount of time. Fortunately, we were in the middle of the pandemic and I had a little bit more time on my hands. I run an agency, but like many agencies at the time, it got a lot quieter because of COVID. So I had a little bit more time on my hands, and I was able to do the research and get the book done. So it was quite an undertaking.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. And so you spoke about also having an agency. Do you want to talk us through what kind of companies do you help and what specifically do you help them with?
Sure. So I co-founded an agency called HBT Marketing. HBT stands for Human Behavior Triggers. And what we do is we use marketing best practices and then we combine them with behavioral science in order to increase the likelihood that our clients get the engagement and response that they're looking for when they're putting out their emails or their direct mail or their landing pages or their social posts. But it's all about that combination of marketing best practices plus behavioral science. And behavioral science, I should probably take a step back and define it, is just very simply the study of how people behave, of what they do, and more specifically of why they do what they do. And behavioral scientists have found that very often people don't make decisions. They don't make deliberate decisions so much as they rely on decision making shortcuts. We cruise along through life on autopilot and we encounter a certain situation and we just default to these hardwired behaviors, giving the matter at hand little to no thought. It's something that humans have developed over the ages as a way to conserve mental energy. So in marketing, we often think, oh, I have to provide all the information. And if I get the right information to the right person at the right time, they'll make the right decision and buy my product or sign up for my service. And that's not entirely true because people aren't really thoughtfully reading the marketing materials. They're, again, cruising along on autopilot, and they might respond one way or another based on some little trigger that they're actually not even aware of. So, from a marketing perspective, from a business perspective, it means that we have the opportunity to nudge people in one direction or prompt people in one direction or another based on the strategy and the creative executions, based on the marketing messages that we put out there in our emails and our direct mail on our landing pages. So yeah, so that's behavioral science, and that's what we do at the agency. And we work for a range of clients. Actually, really, it's got to be a client who's interested in increasing their response and is open to maybe new ways of doing that. So we have clients in the transportation industry, the financial services industry, the insurance industry, the education industry, the high tech industry. Just it
Got
just really depends on, it's not so much the vertical or the sector, and it's more what somebody's goal is. And if they're looking to get better response and they're open to doing things a little differently, we actually end up working very well together.
awesome. With your expertise, maybe we can go over some quick wins for a founder who doesn't come from a marketing background or a founding team, and how can they get those early wins to gain momentum. We discussed going over 7 tips. Uh, so let's dive right into it. Maybe with
Sure.
tip number one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate the fact that not everyone is good at marketing. And you're trying to run a company, start a company, and you have to be good at so many different things, or at least you have to be able to do so many different things. And chances are you're very good at the product or service that you want to bring to market, and maybe a little less experienced doing marketing. And what I found is there are at least 7 pretty common mistakes that businesses and brands make when they're doing their marketing, and they're actually pretty easy to avoid if you know what they are. And so I'll share them with you because I think that your listening audience will find it very helpful. So, if that's the mistake people make and this is the easy way to avoid it, I'm just going to start with this easy way to avoid it and never bother making the mistake. So one of the mistakes is we're too positive. So, we've got this product or this service that we think is incredible. And so we talk about it and we position it in a very positive way, and we explain what the benefits are, and we say all these wonderful things about it.
Yeah.
And it's not that there's anything wrong about that. It's just that behavioral scientists have identified something called loss aversion. And what they found is people are actually twice as likely to avoid the pain of loss. As what that means is it's a mistake to only focus on the good, the advantages, the benefits, the gains. What we want to do is we want to talk about some of the pain that somebody might be in if they don't subscribe to our service, if they don't buy our product. Or we want to talk about some of the pain that they can avoid if they do buy our product or subscribe to our service. We want to introduce a little of that, what you would consider maybe negative. So often it's all about the positive, the benefits, the wonderful things. And it's smart to introduce a little of, if you don't do this, could be the problem you have. If you don't do this, you may find yourself in this situation. Sometimes just using the words don't miss are enough to trigger the idea of loss aversion. Instead of saying, take advantage of this great new product we have, we can say, don't miss out on this great new product that we have. But the power of loss aversion is really very strong. There was a study where there was a company that was selling home insulation, and they took two different approaches. They said, for 50 cents a day, you can insulate your home, or so you can spend 50 cents a day to insulate your home, or save 50 cents a day and don't insulate your home. And what they found was when they used the loss aversion, you could spend it and you would be able to insulate it. And if you didn't spend it, you would actually be losing energy. That's what got people more interested. Okay, people were more interested to know that they were going to be losing money by not insulating versus saving money, gaining money by doing the insulation. So sometimes having that negative message actually helps.
And
That's
a lot of people use that, but in context of SaaS, a lot of people use that on the pricing with the discounts, the annual discounts. Can you overdo loss aversion, and the user feels like, oh, this is too much. This is a trick or gimmick.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that we still want to talk about the benefits and the gains that you'll get if you subscribe to our service, right? We want to talk about all the good things that will happen, but we want to have just a little bit of loss aversion. A lot of times people will say, oh no, I don't want to even mention anything that might be considered negative.
Hmm.
But a little bit of it can actually be very motivating because people are more motivated to avoid the pain of loss than they are to achieve the pleasure of gain, which, you can save money if you do this, or you'll lose money if you don't do this. And what got more people to act was, oh, I'll lose money if I don't do this, then I'm going to sign up for the product, versus I'll sign up for the product so I can save money. Saving is good. We all like to save, and you would think that saving would be the main draw, the main motivator. But actually, what's more motivating than saving is not losing the
Not
money.
losing. Yeah. Nice. Thanks for sharing that. Let's move on to the mistake number two.
Mistake number two, that is, I think, forgetting that people need reassurance and not just product information. So when we're trying to sell our products, when we're trying to sell our services, sometimes we think we'll just get the information out there and we'll give you all the sales points. Here's the features and the benefits and the specs and the speeds and the feeds and all the information. And yes, people need that. They need that to make a buying decision. But often marketers forget that what they also need is a little bit of, the way that we can provide that is by tapping into something called social proof. And social proof is just the idea that when people aren't sure of what decision to make, they look to others, they see what other people have done, and they follow their lead. You can say, this is our most popular product, or this is our fastest growing product, or over the last 3 months, we've seen an increase in subscribers. Especially if you're a startup, maybe you can't say, hey, we've got 1 million customers yet, but you can say that over the last 3 months, the trend has been to add more customers. The trend is heading in the right direction. And that's a good example of social proof. If you talk about something that's the fastest growing, if you talk about something that's the most popular, that gives people the reassurance. So in addition to having the specifics about the product or the service, the information, you also provide some of that reassurance in the form of social proof. And that can actually be very powerful. And that's, again, one of the things that we sometimes miss out on. And part of it is because we're big fans of our software as a service, for example. We've worked hard. We want to bring it to the market. We're convinced it's going to be, and it's going to be helpful to people. And so we want to talk all about that and why it's so good. But we sometimes forget we still need to provide a little bit more information, that thing that's going to make people feel, I guess this would be a good move. And social proof is one way that we can do that. So a big mistake is not using a little bit of social proof, whether it's, again, fastest growing, most popular, number of stars. It could be a review.
Yeah.
If you have someone gives you a rating or a review, you want to use that. And sometimes people think it's got to be a perfect review. It's got to say, this is a wonderful product. But it could be, I wasn't really sure because I hadn't heard of them, but I decided to give it a try. Wow, was it great? Somebody, a marketer might say, or a company might say, I don't want that first part that says I wasn't sure because I hadn't heard of them. But that's okay because anyone who's reading that is probably thinking the same thing. They're wondering, I don't know, I've never heard of these people. Who are they? Or maybe they're thinking, gee, I don't know if the price is worth it. And if you find a testimonial that says, we thought maybe we could find something that was less expensive. But then when we tried this, we thought, this is fabulous and it's worth every penny. So as long as you start with maybe that skepticism or that buying barrier and then end up with a, this was really good, thumbs up, that can be great. It doesn't just have to be the, this is fabulous. We can use a testimonial that says, yeah, I wasn't certain or I wondered about. But then the end of it is, hey, it was really wonderful. Testimonials, ratings, another great way to introduce social proof.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if the reviews are selected from the ICP or people who you really want to sell at an early stage because you want to focus, or it can be any review.
I think when we're first starting out, we have to take what we can get. It might be friends and family reviews, right? We have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And the important thing is to have the reviews because that provides the social proof. The best reviews come from people who are very much like the prospective customer, right? So if you're targeting, I don't know, accountants, have the review come from an accountant. If you're targeting in their 50s, have the review come from a guy who's in his 50s. The closer the testimonial giver is to the testimonial reader, the better off it is because you recognize yourself, right? If I was reading a review and it came from somebody who ran an advertising agency, I'd say, oh, wow, that's pretty relevant to what I do. I run an advertising agency too. So it makes the review or the testimonial more relevant, worth a little bit more. So the best ones are to the people that you're targeting. That said, when we're first starting out, said it could be your friends, it could be your family. We just want to get something there to get that baseline social proof in place. And if it doesn't turn out to be perfect mirror of your ideal customer, that's okay.
Awesome. Yeah, makes sense. It does ease the user into thinking they're not making a wrong decision.
Interesting thing too about when we're talking about social proof and reviews and ratings, and there was a study that came out of Northwestern University that found that the ideal star rating isn't 5 stars. We all think, oh, if it's 5 stars, it's going to be great. So we all hope to get that 5 stars. But the ideal rating is somewhere between 4.2 and 4.7. And the reason for this is if you have nothing but 5 stars, the researchers found people get suspicious.
Mm.
Oh, this doesn't seem right. Maybe it's bots. Maybe they're pulling the bad reviews down. It makes people skeptical. It makes them suspicious. But something between 4.2 and 4.7, that makes people feel that, yes, it's a good product. Obviously, it doesn't appeal to everybody. Nothing really does. There are always going to be some people who are going to say, oh, it's not quite right for me, but it appeals to most people. Most people think it's good. So that 4.2 to 4.7 is actually a great place to be as you're striving to get those reviews. Sure, you're going to want some 5 star ones because that's going to contribute to a higher average, but it doesn't have to be only 5 stars. And in fact, a little bit less than only 5 stars is actually better. Little tip for people who are trying to get the right number of reviews and star ratings for their social proof.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. If it was just 5 stars, doesn't sound realistic at all. So, if you're not too positive, we have some reassurance. What next?
Sure. The third thing is to not take this approach that we have the right answer, the right product for you. And instead, what we want to do is we want to provide some choice. And it could be a couple of different products, or it could be a couple of different service levels, or a couple of different tiers. But providing choice actually taps into something that behavioral scientists call autonomy bias, which is this deep seated desire for people to have some kind of control over themselves, over their environment. So essentially, we don't like to be, as people, as humans, we don't like to be forced or pushed to do something. We don't like to feel like we don't have a choice. We like to feel that we're in charge. And if you have a choice between product A and product B, or service level A and service level B, or the basic or the professional levels. But if you have some kind of choice, that means you're making the choice. That means you're the one in charge. That means you have the autonomy. And behavioral scientists have found that greatly increases the likelihood that someone will make a buying decision in the moment. In fact, it can nearly quadruple the likelihood that someone will make the buying decision in the moment. So if you just put one thing down in front of someone, sometimes the business person or the marketer, we think, oh, I'm doing a service by narrowing it down. And here's the one thing. And I'm saying, oh, Vishesh, this is perfect for you. You're going to love this. But you're going to think, I don't know. I have nothing to compare it to. There's no context. I guess I'll do some research. I'll check with my friends or my colleagues, or I'll jump online and I'll Google or I'll Bing and I'll see what I can find. And then we get busy and we don't talk to our friends or our colleagues and we don't do the research, and the buying moment disappears. But when you put two things down in front of someone, well, you could have the basic or the professional. You can have the less expensive or the more expensive. You can have product A or product B. Right away, what happens is the question is no longer do I or do I not want this thing. The question goes to, oh, which of these two do I want? It's almost like a given that you're going to choose one of the two. There is a third option, which is I don't want either, but we rarely go there. One thing, we're like, I don't know, do I or do I not? Two things, like, oh, which of these two do I want? So providing some kind of choice is something that marketers should do, that brands and companies should do when we're bringing something to market. If there's some element of choice, it could be how long you subscribe for. Do you want the 1 year or the 2 year subscription? It could be, I don't know, how many seats do you want? You want one user or three users? But some kind of a choice that we can offer our prospective customers makes it more likely that they'll make a decision, because it feels good to choose between two things. It feels good not to be forced into only one option. And it's time savings because they don't have to do any kind of research. They just automatically have some kind of context. Oh, between these two, that's the one I want. So I think that's a very valuable tip. It's easy to implement, it's often overlooked, and it can make a big difference.
People want to be buying and not be sold, and so they do enjoy choosing. Would you recommend for an early stage company just adding tiers is good enough, or do you think um, comparison with other competitors out there can also provide that choice? So listing out us versus whatever the competition is, or is that too risky to do?
Yeah, it definitely brings more risk. You're better off if both of the choices lead to business for you, right?
Yeah.
You can have this or you can have this, but I'm selling both. You get to happily choose and I get to happily make
Yeah.
money. So that's always the best. However, there are times when you might want to look at comparing yourself to the competition. You want to feel, you know, pretty confident that you're going to come out on top. You're going to be the better of the two. And it certainly does help people if you can say, compared to our competitor, here's what we do better. Here's why we're a better buy. Here's why we're a better choice. As long as you have a strong story there. The problem is so often we have parity products or we have people who pretend that they have the same similar or the same service or a similar service. And if it starts to blur in the customer's mind or the prospective customer's mind, then we might end up losing out. People think it's close enough, I'll go with the other guy. But if we have a really strong explanation as to why we're better, nothing wrong with that, particularly because we're talking about the early stage founders where we might want to compare ourselves against somebody who's better established, and that's okay. When you're well established, conventional marketing wisdom is you don't really compare yourself to somebody else. You don't want to do that. But when you're up and coming, uh, sometimes it can help. It's like, oh, it helps put you in the same league in a way.
Hmm.
You're just starting out, but if you're comparing yourself to, I don't know, Amazon or to Dropbox or I don't know, some known company, and it's if you can put yourself in their league, right away that does something for you. It puts you in the correct competitive set. Now you may still lose to the competition, but if you have a strong argument for why you're a better choice, comparing yourself to them actually puts you in that competitive set. When people walk away with the idea that they could get just a good just as good a product, but maybe pay a little less, or they can pay the same but get a more advanced product or whatever it turns out to be. But putting yourself in that competitive set could work for you. It could be risky though, as we said earlier.
Yeah.
The safer bet is you have two choices and both of them lead right back to my wallet.
Yeah. Yeah. We are reaching a point where, especially for SaaS and digital products, with AI, things are very easy to replicate. So we are going to see a lot more of parity products. How can marketing help with getting that edge over parity products?
Yeah, that is a great question. When things start to blur, you can lose out. You can lose money to the competition, you can lose business to the competition. There are probably a few things that we can do to help protect against that. One is you want to start to build a strong brand. And in our case, I think we're talking about building the business and building the brand at the same time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we don't have the luxury as we're starting things to invest in the brand and then we'll try to build a business. We have to do both or we're going to go out of business. So trying to build a brand and trying to build a business at the same time. But you want that strong brand. And a way to have a strong brand is to have a consistent message so that wherever anyone encounters you, they get the same idea about what it is you stand for and how you can help them. Another thing that you can do is you can have a name for your product or your company that is a little bit unusual, that stands out. The one everyone talks about these days is the bottled water called Liquid Death, which is just a very odd name for bottled water, but it stands out. But there are other ways to make your product or your service stand out, but it could be the name, it could be the way that you advertise it, but you want to consistently be out there so that people start to get a sense of who you are. And no matter where they encounter you, it's always the same. You represent yourself the same way. You get that stronger brand, and then it helps protect you from the competition. And then you have to know what it is you stand for. As you said, there are going to be certain parody products, there are going to be imitations out there, but there has to be something that you feel you're going to do better than anyone else. And it could be that your service is incredible, or your prices are better, or your updates come faster, or your upgrades come faster. But there has to be something that people associate with your product and your service so that it helps distinguish you from the other competition out there. So it's standing for something, it's being consistent in the marketplace, and it's making sure that your message gets noticed in the marketplace.
Yeah. Something unique about what you do. Yeah. Cool. Mistake number four. We're on to
Sure. So I think mistake number 4 is one that a lot of people make. I don't think this is unique to early stage founders. It just happens a lot, but it's it's assuming that, all right, we have to get our marketing message out there, whether it's an email or an ad, we have to get it out there. And as long as it's accurate, it's correct, and as long as there are no typos, we're good, right? One word is just as good as another as long as it accurately conveys the information and it's spelled correctly. And that's not entirely true. For example, you could be writing an email or an ad, and you could say how we can get you an hour back in your day. Or you could say, discover how we can get you an hour back in your day. The difference between learn and discover is big because learn sounds like work. Learn sounds hard. Discover sounds like fun. Discover taps into something behavioral scientists call novelty. And the human brain is hardwired to seek out the new and novel because when we find something that we think is new, it activates the reward center in our brain, and that releases dopamine, which, among other things, is the feel good chemical. So as a result, we're constantly looking for that next new thing because we want that next rush of dopamine. We want to feel good. If we can say, discover how we'll save you an extra hour every day, that's great. If we say, learn how we'll save you an extra hour every day, that sounds like work. That's just not as appealing. But to someone who's got a million things on their plate and who's just trying to get the information out there, the two pretty much say the same thing, don't they? Discover how you can do this, learn how you can do this. Same thing. As long as we spell it, we're good. We're conveying the right information. But it's little things like that. In subject lines, email subject lines, the difference between free and complimentary is huge. Free gets you twice as many opens. Complimentary sounds a little nicer, a little more sophisticated, but free gets you twice as many opens. And of course, there was a time when free would trigger the spam filters. It no longer does. It's not an issue. 10, 15 years ago, you didn't want to use it in your subject line. Now you absolutely can,
Hmm.
and it's better than complimentary. So again, both of them mean the same thing, but one of them is going to get you twice as many opens of your email than the other one. Dan Ariely is a known behavioral scientist. He's known all over the world, and he wrote a book called Predictably Irrational. And he has an entire chapter in his book about the pulling power of the word free. And he explains that free produces such an emotional charge in us that we overvalue the thing that's free. If we had to pay even a little bit for it, we might not be interested. But if we can have it for free, we want it. Get out of my way. I want that free thing. If you think about going to a conference and you're going up and down the convention floor at the trade show with all the different exhibitors and they have their booths and they have their giveaways, and we're grabbing the pens and the coffee mugs and the t-shirts and the all the little tchotchke things, the binder clips, whatever. And then we pack up at the end of the conference to go home and we're like, why'd I take all
Yeah.
this junk? What am I going to do with it? But at the time, it was like, oh, I have to have that little stuffed toy. I have to have that coffee mug. I have to have that t-shirt. As if we have no other t-shirts and no other coffee mugs. But there's something about free. It's very powerful. So again, discover, not learn. Free, not complimentary. And another big one, honestly, is you versus I, we, or our company. Very common mistake. We're so enthusiastic about telling people about what we do, about what our company does, and we want people to know our company's name. And so we talk about that. We do this. We can do this for you. We can help you do that. We can increase this. And people gloss over we and they go to the word you because you is a substitute for me. I'm more interested in myself than anybody else. And I'm not alone in that. Everybody is more interested in themselves than in anyone else. And if I see my name, if I see Nancy, that's great. Or if I see the word you, that's a substitute for Nancy. It means it's about me and I'm going to be interested. And so instead of saying we do this, we can change it and say, you'll be able to benefit from this, or you'll be happy to know that we do this, or you can gain these advantages with our company, as opposed to our company can give you these advantages. Leading with that word you, as opposed to I, our, we, much better off. So those are just 3 examples of ways that if you just stop for a minute and think about which word you want to use, there's a better option and a not as good option. Even though they both convey the information, even though they're both technically, factually correct, one is going to help you more than the other. And so if you do nothing else but just every time you go to use the word, Complementary, substitute free. Every time you use the word we, see if you can use the word you. Every time you're going to use the word learn, replace it with discover. You'll be much better off.
Nice. Yeah, words are so important. Harder to do than it sounds. You really need to focus and understand the emotion of it. I'm sure there are a lot more hacks like these. Is there any good recommendation where people can go and get better at identifying how to write or use the right words?
Well, you can pick up my book, Using Behavioral Science and Marketing. There's 17 chapters and 288 pages of information, including one very specific chapter on word choice. And there's also a lot of information out there, though. Of course, I'm mentioning my book, but actually at our company's website, HBT Marketing, hbtmktg.com, we have a lot of what you call thought leadership, but a lot of interviews and articles and cheat sheets and tip sheets that people can access for free, and they can use that information. They can get a lot of information from that. I'm trying to think who else is there's another author named Melina Palmer, and she also talks about how to create good advertising with a foundation of behavioral science. She wrote a book called The Truth About Pricing. She wrote a book called What Your Customers Want and Can't Tell You. She's another person that I would endorse for finding some of this good information.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I didn't mean to short circuit your book, but that's a good point. You wrote a book. And so let's move on to mistake number five.
Okay, yeah. So mistake number five is also a pretty common one. All of these are common, and so I want to give you easy ways to avoid them. And mistake number five is giving people a discount. And you might say, why is that a mistake? Sometimes that's the very thing that will get somebody interested.
Yeah.
You might say, we've tested discounts and they work. Well, every time we offer a discount, it gets people interested, and it increases sales. And I'm not going to argue with you. That certainly does work. It can work. But behavioral scientists have identified something called the motivating uncertainty effect. And what they found is people are, I think it's 68% more likely to complete a task with an uncertain reward. So, what's an uncertain reward? They don't know what the reward is, or they don't know if they're going to get it. So, instead of giving everybody a discount, you can give someone the chance to win a discount. Maybe your digital ad has one of those spinning wheels in it, and you spin the wheel to see, am I going to get 5% off, or a 10% discount, or a 15% discount? Or maybe you send somebody a scratch ticket and they scratch off to see what their discount is going to be. Or maybe you give occasional discounts. Every 100th visitor gets a discount. You don't know if you're going to be the 100th person visiting the website or not, but you publicize the fact that every 100th visitor will get a discount. But it's the idea of not knowing whether or not you're going to win and finding out that becomes in and of itself rewarding. We're more likely to complete that task with an uncertain reward. If I say to you, order and I'll give you 5% off, it's a nice incentive. But if I say, hey, spin this wheel to see if you're going to get 5, 10, or 15% off, now you're curious. What am I going to get? When you spin the wheel and you get the discount, you're like, oh, okay, now I'm going to use it because you feel like you won it, you worked for it. I would definitely say, instead of just giving a blanket discount, test the idea of letting people win a discount or win a reward, because it can be very motivating.
Or even randomize it in some form, like you are one of the five people who are getting the discount today or something.
Yes, yes. It could be we're giving away 5 of these this day. See if you're going to be one of the 5. And then, of course, when you find out that you are, you feel great. You feel really special. You feel like, hey, got to use this because I'm one of the 5 people that got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely, and you can work the economics too. If you were going to give everybody, a 10% discount, you can have a 5, a 10, and a 15, and you can run the numbers so that at the end of the day, you're giving away the same amount of money. You're just dividing it up between the 5, the 10, the 15, as opposed to everyone getting a 10,
Right.
and it just gets more engagement. People want to find out, what am I gonna get?
Right. Obviously, a lot of pricing pages these days do have a discount, right? As we briefly touched upon it earlier, the yearly versus monthly discount is a flat discount usually and applies to all. Do you think it works as well as it's used, or do you think people should do less of it?
I think you have to be careful with discounts too, and this is probably a good thing to bring up, because if you train people to wait for a discount, if they think they're always going to get one, then they don't want to buy if there isn't a sale, if there isn't a discount available. So you want to use them strategically. Maybe as you're introducing something, maybe as you're moving into a new customer segment or into a new market, or maybe at a special time of year. But you don't want people to feel like they can always get one, because then when there isn't one, they'll wait. And as we talk about pricing, as you were saying with the prices there on the page, there's some interesting things that we can do with pricing too. So when a price appears higher on the screen versus lower on the screen, the exact same price, if it said $100 up on the screen or $100 lower on the screen, when it's higher on the screen, people just perceive it to be a higher price than when it's lower on the screen.
Oh,
Same number, right? Interesting, right? Behavioral scientists talk about something called magnitude encoding process. And that's basically this idea that how the number, how the price is displayed, influences how big or small we think it is. And take that same $100, for example, because it's a good example to use. You could say $100, decimal point 00. It's $100. Or you could say $100, same $100. But in the first case, because of the decimal point and the two zeros, it takes up more physical space and it's perceived to be a bigger, higher number than when it takes up less space. So, if you're having a sale and you're giving someone a discount, you can say 100.00, make that $100 look larger because that's what they're saving. But if it's your price, you want to make your price look small. Speaking of which, if you are going to have a sale, you want to always have the original price first, and then after it, you want to have the discounted price, because the original price becomes the anchor. And then when you look at the lower price, it seems that much lower because it used to be that, now it's this. And the further apart they are, the bigger the discount appears. If it said $100 and you went $50, or you could say $100 $50. When you're running them horizontally, the further apart they are physically, the further apart they seem monetarily. Same two numbers, but where they are positioned in proximity to each other makes a difference. There's some interesting research that found that a sales price written in red is perceived as a deeper discount by men. Women, it could be black, it could be red, doesn't seem to make a difference, but men respond to sales prices in red. Again, a little something to think about. And then one last tip with numbers and pricing is sometimes we have the original price and then we put a slash through it and we have our new price. And we make that new price in a larger font size, a larger type size, because we want to make sure people don't miss it, right? Here's the original price. Here's the new price. Wow, look at that great deal. And some research came out of Clark University and the University of Connecticut. And what they found was if you use a smaller typeface, a smaller point size for the sales price, it again makes people feel that the price itself is smaller. It's all about this: how much space does a price take up? Where on the page or on the screen does it appear? These little things that you wouldn't think should make a difference, research shows that they do. And so you don't have to have a sale. Just think about where you're going to place your price on the screen, higher up versus lower. There's also some research that talks about in cultures and countries that read left to right, the thinking is that the further you go, the bigger the numbers get, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. On the left of the screen is better than being on the right hand corner of the screen. Just doesn't require much to move the price around, but it could actually be beneficial.
yeah. Oh, I think I need to change my pricing page.
Certainly worth a test, right? Yeah.
People who are pricing their products as $9.99, so 9.99,
Yeah.
they're better off pricing it as $9 because the number is smaller.
Yeah, although there's the interesting thing about the nines is they're what's known as a charm price. And when people see a nine, they don't really think a lot about it. They just assume that it's a good price. There was a study that came out of MIT, and they had I think it was a article of women's clothing, maybe a blouse, and they offered it separately at three different price points. It was $47, $49, and $52, something like that. I'm making it up, but it did not sell best at 47, which was the lowest price. It sold best at 49 just because of that nine. When we see nine, we just assume it's going to be a good price. So it's almost like instead of having a $10 price, you want to have something for $9.99. You're only losing 1 penny, but it seems like from the customer's perspective, it seems like it's a dollar difference, right? There's $10 and there's $9.99, but we focus on that first number, that it's called the left digit effect. The first number we see is a 9, or the first number we see is a 10, and we're like, oh, 9, that's a dollar. Or maybe it was $100, or maybe it's like $900 and $800. So you could have $900 or you could have $899. It's a $1 difference, but it seems like a $100 difference. Little things like that are worth thinking about. Should you do $9.99 or 10? Yeah, I think I'd still do the $9.99 actually. But if it was $9, 9.00, or $9, just 9, no dot zero zero, I would do the 9 if it were a price.
Or, all right, some changes to make. Moving on, mistake number 6.
Mistake number 6, yeah, this is particularly applicable, or particularly relevant, I should say, to any B2B, business to business marketers, and that is we want to use simple language. And the mistake is using too many acronyms, too much jargon for your particular industry, too much tech speak, big words. And the truth of the matter is, people in B2B and in B2C, business to business and in business to consumer, people want things to be easy. They want information to be simple. They're skimming and scanning, and they just want to be able to easily understand. And a lot of times we think, oh, I have a very expensive product, and so I have a very educated professional audience, and so I want to use these buzzwords and these acronyms and these technical phrases and technical words because that's what they expect. And there's research that shows that's not the case, that the simpler something is written, people not only prefer it, they actually judge the author to be more intelligent, right? The easier we can make it for people to consume our information, the better off it is. The happier people are, the better they understand it. Behavioral scientists talk about something called cognitive fluency. And basically, what it means is people prefer things that are easier to think about and easier to understand. Not only do they prefer them, they judge them to be more accurate and more truthful. And as a result, if we think something is truthful, we're more likely to be persuaded by it. And then the third thing is they feel more confident in their ability to make a decision about them. And in marketing, particularly in the early stages where we really need those customers, we want people to feel confident making a decision. If they don't feel confident, they put it off, they don't make it, or they go someplace else. So anything we can do to make them feel confident is going to help us. And one of the things that we can do to make them feel confident is to use simple, easy to understand language, to avoid the acronyms, avoid the tech speak and the jargon, and just use plain, simple, easy to understand language so that people can grasp the information right away.
That's spot on. B2B messaging, a lot of businesses overcomplicated. But what would you say to is a fix for using simple language, but there is a lot of vagueness? If you go to so many B2B sites, it is very hard to tell one from the other. They're all using simple language. They all somehow help you with your data and gain insights. But that doesn't tell someone who's looking at the site what do they really do, even though it uses simple words.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. I think there are two things. One is we want simple language, not very complicated, difficult to understand language. The other thing is we want specific, concrete language versus general, vague language. A simple example is do you want to buy this shirt, or do you want to buy this shirt or this t-shirt? Do you want these pants, or do you want this pair of blue jeans? Right? The more specific that we can get, the better off we are. I know what you mean. Sometimes you go to these company websites and everybody's got a solution to increase your sales.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they do, but okay, you've got the solution that's going to help me increase. But how are you going to do it? Is it a training program? Is it a media buying program? What is it you're going to do that's going to help me increase my sales? So the specificity is really important. We were talking earlier about simple language, but it's got to be simple and it's got to be specific. The idea of concrete language is definitely something that we want to keep in mind. Concrete language is language that's more specific, that allows people to actually create a mental picture. Like I said, you want this pair of pants, or do you want this pair of blue jeans? Blue jeans are easier to visualize. You know what I'm talking about. And I know that's a consumer example, but it's a quick way to get across my point. But anything that we can do to be very specific, very explicit about what we do and how we do it is a good thing, because we want people to be able to create that mental picture of, wow, if I subscribe to their software as a service, this is how my life would change. I would be able to make more money. I would be able to get home earlier. I would be able to save an hour a day in frustration or headaches or work that I no longer have to do. But anything we can do to quantify and specify and move from being very general to very specific is a good thing.
Right. Simple language and be specific.
Yes.
Makes sense. Cool. Uh, Moving on to mistake number 7, the last one that we're going to discuss today.
Sure. So this last one is actually it's a visual tip,
Hmm.
okay? So a lot of times we show before and after shots. Here's what your database looks like prior to hiring our company. Here's how it looks now that we've organized it. Or here's what your prospective customer looks like with their current problem. And here's that same person smiling now that they've become your customer. But we try to show this before and after. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that the two pictures are as close together as possible. We don't want them far apart. The closer they are together, the closer people think the relationship is and the stronger they think the product is. So if you're doing a before and after, if you're doing a comparison, we want the two shots very close together. Closer they are together, the better they think your product is, the more effective they think your product is. So that's a design tip. I think another design tip that I'll add in is, if you can't do before and after, but you're going to show in ads, is a very good thing. But you want to show people's faces, because humans are hardwired to look at people's faces. They're drawn to people's faces, particularly to their eyes, right? We make eye contact, right? If you're going to show somebody in an ad, in an email, on your landing page, you want that person looking out at your reader, at your viewer. You don't want them looking off to the side or down or up, because what that's going to do is that's going to take your prospective customer off to the side or off the screen. We want to make that connection. And if you're not going to have the person in your advertising look directly at your viewer, what you want them to do is you want them to look at the thing on your page, on your landing page, on your website, that you want your prospective customer to look at. It might be a special offer. It might be the price. It might be your value statement, your proposition about how you can help them. But you want the eye gaze to direct people to the thing, the most important thing on your page, because people are drawn to people's faces, they're drawn to other people's eyes, and if they're not making eye contact, they follow eye gaze. So it's a strategic way to use um, people in your ads. You either have them pull your reader in, or you have them direct your reader to the most important thing on your website or your landing page or in your ad that you want people to look at. A couple of little design tips there.
Cool. So the before and after very hard to do for like for non-physical things. I guess.
Yes.
Uh, any hacks on how to arrive at that for like SaaS products or software products?
Yeah, it could be, you could look at it a couple of different ways. One could just be who was not your customer and then someone who becomes your customer. So in the first case, they're just looking like they're tearing their hair out and they're frazzled and they're frustrated. And then now they've become your customer and they're happy and serene and smiling. And that's the impact that your product can have. The other way to look at it is, depending on what it is that your software as a service does. I worked for a client once and they were helping startups get social media presence. So they would get a website up and running for them. They would manage their Google search. And if you think about that, okay, so what would the outcome be? It could be, the before shot could be like a poorly designed website, for example, and the after shot could be a really great looking website. Or the before site could have been a low rank in Google, and the after shot rather, could be a high rank in Google, because with the software as a service, it helped them rank higher in searches. I mean, you can think about what's the ultimate thing that your software is going to solve for, and then maybe try to show that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, using third-party ranking or things like that. Yeah, makes sense. What do you think about charts showing the graph going up, right? How do they compare with before and after.
So charts are just in and of themselves good, charts and graphs. There was a study that came out of Cornell University, and what they did is they had people read this little paragraph about this new drug that was coming out. And once people read the paragraph about this new drug that was going to come out, they said to people, "What do you think? You think the drug's going to be any good?" People were like, "Yeah." I think 67% of them said, "Yeah, looks pretty good." And then they repeated the study, and this time they had people read the same paragraph, but in addition to the paragraph, there was a chart that kind of wrote along with it. And people would read the information. What do you think? And the 67% number went up to, I think, 96%. Like 96% of the people who read about it said, yeah, I think it's going to be good. And so the researchers, they back the data, dug into the data to figure out what was going on. And it wasn't that the chart was providing information that wasn't in the paragraph. And it wasn't that the chart was making the information in the paragraph easier to understand, easier to visualize. No, it was simply what the researchers called scientific veracity, which is basically the idea that the chart, the mere presence of the chart, made people believe it must be true. What they just read must be true because here's a chart. I'm not going to really spend a lot of time poring over the chart, studying the chart, but it's there. And because it's there, I assume that what I'm reading about is, and I know that's not quite the question you were asking. I think you were showing before and after charts, but I'm just saying a chart in and of itself is a good thing. If you have an opportunity to include a chart dimensionalizing some aspect of your software as a service, use that chart. And it's just going to make what you're saying, the words on your screen, on your page, it's going to make them so much more credible, so much more believable, that mere presence of the chart. And then, yes, if you want to show a before and after with the charts, I think there are interesting things you can do with that. It could be a chart where it's this is what you'd pay if you go someplace else. This is what you'd pay with us, or this is what you can save with someone else. This is what you can save with us. So showing those kinds of things can also be, I think, very beneficial.
Interesting. We are done with number 7. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Very insightful. I know I have to make some changes in my product after this. Where can people find the book? I know I found it in Amazon. I guess that's the go to place. Is it available in all formats? I have it in on Kindle.
Yeah, you can certainly get it on Amazon. You can also get it at koganpage.com. Kogan Page is the publisher, and they have offices. They're headquartered in London, but they have offices in India. They have offices in the US, and they've got a very good distribution network. So you can get it on their website. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble, which is a big bookstore chain
Yeah.
in, I don't know, America and Europe, I think. I'm not sure if it goes beyond that. But yeah, so there are lots of places that you can find it. And I'd encourage your listeners to check it out. 288 pages, 17 chapters, and over 25 different specific, practical, actionable, proven, and easy ways to increase the effectiveness of your marketing messages.
Cool. Thanks for taking the time, Nancy, and it was a pleasure catching up again and going over these hacks and mistakes. And I hope we'll get to do this again sometime.
Thank you very much, Vishesh. It was great to chat with you and to share some of these common mistakes and easy ways to correct them. And again, thanks for your kind words about my book, Using Behavioral Science in Marketing. And yeah, I hope to talk to you again sometime. And you'll have to let me know if you do make any of those changes, how they work out for you.
Awesome. Yeah, will do, will do. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. See you in the next episode.